Alleluia, alleluia.
Alleluia, alleluia.
Blessed are you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth. You have revealed to little ones the mysteries of the kingdom. Alleluia, alleluia.
Alleluia, alleluia.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. At that time, Jesus exclaimed, I give praise to you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth. For although you have hidden these things from the wise and the learned, you have revealed them to the little ones. Yes, Father, such has been your gracious will. All things have been handed over to me by my Father. No one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son wishes to reveal him. Come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart, and you will find rest for yourselves. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. The Gospel of the Lord.
St. Paul tells us about living in the Spirit. And yet there's a strange line in here that is difficult for us to reconcile sometimes. It seems a strange thing often when we really think about it, when we're praying at a funeral for someone or we're at the cemetery, and we hear things about being raised up in the flesh. St. Paul says, if the Spirit of the one who raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you, the one who raised Christ from the dead will give life also to your mortal bodies through his Spirit that dwells in you. That isn't often something that we think about our bodies being raised, but at the same time, something that really illustrates what we're getting at here is, think of all of the descriptions that we have, all of the visions that we have, all of these images in our minds of what the heavenly kingdom will be like. When we describe heaven in earthly terms, it is because we are describing what we know. We often go way too far with this, because oftentimes what we do is we describe heaven as something that we desire, which is roughly more of the same. Only the good stuff of what we know now, but just more of the same. That would go too far in that direction. Thinking that heaven will be like ideal earth. Well, we can all at least hope that there is something greater than that, and we certainly ought to, or much of what we do would not truly be worth it. We can also go the other way, and this mistake is very common throughout history. That we ignore so much of what happens here and now with our bodies, because we say that it is not something of our bodies that matters in eternity, but it is something of the Spirit. Well, that's right along the lines of saying that someone has a good heart, but we don't have any evidence to back it up. When we know that very naturally, that we can't just say someone has a good heart, We can't just say, well, that person's a good person, even though they've never done anything good in their life. Again, that's extreme, but we know that very naturally, that cannot be. That there are certainly things that we can know in this life of someone's soul. Through those actions, we know them. In the same way, we were created. And God created us and gave us this life so that through this life, we might know God. We can often turn that on its head, but that's the ultimate reality of the meaning of our lives, that we get to know the gift of our life itself, that we begin to understand something of that mystery. But the true mystery here that we really ought to ponder to begin with is that we cannot say we are a spiritual being with a body. And we cannot say that we are a bodily creature with a spirit. But we must say that we are body and spirit. Because to say anything else is to find error on one side or the other. If we find ourselves in error, which most of us do when we speak of this subject, it is very much the same as what we see here from St. Paul. It's so easy to use the word spirit more times than body, or use the word body more times than spirit, talking about a specific subject, a specific circumstance. And every time that we do that, we might even begin to convince ourselves one way or the other. Taken as a whole, hopefully, we do speak of both equally, because both are equal parts that make us up. Both are incredibly important enough that somehow in this mystery, our bodies will still be necessary. There's a question mark on that one. In heaven. But apparently so, according to God. That one doesn't always make sense to us. Yet again, as I said in the beginning, that doesn't make sense to us, but at the same time, how do we describe heaven? It usually has something to do with getting to hug our grandparents and eat all the chicken and noodles and chocolate cake that we want. We describe heaven in that way, and yet so often don't consider that our bodies would be raised. Don't consider that that is such a deep part of who we are eternally. How all this will work is the subject of many conversations, the subject of quite a few jokes, usually having to do with old priests chiming in and saying, well, hopefully I have better knees and hips with my heavenly body than I do with my earthly body. That's about as far as we normally get because we struggle with this as a mystery. Let us allow ourselves to struggle with it. Let us allow that to be what it is. It is a mystery, and it is something that we will not completely understand, not in this life. Allow it to be a mystery, and allow yourself to struggle with what this means, to be both body and soul. Allow God to teach you in the way that God needs to teach you now. allow that mystery to deepen with each step that you take, each step in understanding it a little more clearly. Allow yourself to struggle with the fact that you will never completely understand it. And then allow God to truly take over. Allow God to teach you. Allow God to show you your own life. In all of these things, let us remember that we are certainly not the first to struggle with these things. We're the first to find ourselves in error on one side or the other. And let us remember each time that we sway one way or another. Let us remember that we must find the way that God is teaching us in that moment, maybe that side. And in the next, God may teach us from the other side. Let us then allow God to help us find that balance, that unity between our bodies and souls, and so understand our lives a little more clearly. Allow yourselves to struggle with that mystery by allowing God to lead you through it.